إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Before we start the actual class, I'd like to announce just a few things. A brother told me that because of the technology that has been made available, the classes being recorded, a lot of people have become lazy. A lot of people have become lazy, and by that I mean instead of coming to the masjid and sitting with us and benefiting, then they might stay at home and listen to the lecture at home. And these type of advancements in technology where you have knowledge at your fingertips, where you can just tune into a class whenever you want, it is a blessing, no doubt. But at the same time, it should not lead us to leave off coming to the masjid. If a person really can't make it to the masjid, then alhamdulillah, we have that other way of learning as well. But I sincerely ask the brothers and sisters to make it out to the masjid, to come here, sit. It's only for half an hour, 40 minutes, to benefit, and it's these type of gatherings that Allah Azza wa Jal sends down His mercy. That's the first thing that I want to mention. Secondly, like we did yesterday, I'd like to share with you just a few things that happened the past week and that will happen in the coming few weeks. Alhamdulillah, last Wednesday I had the opportunity to be invited to the synagogue here in town, and the occasion was for an event known as Crystal Nacht. It is to remember the atrocities, the things that happened to the Jewish community back in World War II. And I think that these type of occasions are important in order for us to build bridges between the communities, and that experience was very eye-opening for myself. And in the coming week or two, there's going to be another event between the Muslim Association at UVic and the Jewish Society at UVic. So this event is in order to try to promote peace and understanding between the different communities. One thing that I want to offer as an invite to people in the community, this Tuesday coming up, we will have a school visiting us, and I mentioned this yesterday. 90 students will come to the masjid. 90 students. That's, I believe, the largest amount of students that have come all at one time. So on Tuesday, inshallah, at 10 o'clock in the morning, anyone from the community that wants to come and listen and see what type of presentation is given to the non-Muslims and the way that we serve the community, please come and join me on Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Having said that, inshallah, let's focus on the class, the seerah at hand. So we reached the part of the story where some of the companions, namely Uthman bin Affan, and even the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, who was the wife of Uthman at the time, Ruqayya radiallahu anha, she and other Muslims, they went to Habasha, to Abyssinia. And when they went over there, what people don't realize is that the hijrah to Habasha was actually twice. There was 2 times that the Muslims in the early days, they went to Habasha 1 time, and then they shortly after that, after 2 months, they actually came back. And the books, the narrations tell us that those early companions, when they went to Habasha, they went in early Sha'ban. They went in early Sha'ban, and they stayed until the end of Ramadan. And the reason why they came back was actually because they had heard rumors had reached them that the Muslims were no longer being persecuted in Mecca, that the situation became much better, and because of that they decided to return back to Mecca. So when they first went, they stayed for 2 months, and then they came back to Mecca, only to realize that that was not the case. They came back to Mecca and they realized that the Muslims were still facing a hard time. And it was shortly after that another group of people, those early Muslims, went back to Habasha, and this time they actually managed to settle down there. Okay, so they started their lives there, and when the Quraysh back in Mecca found out about how a small group of Muslims had made their way to Habasha, and that they were able to live without any difficulties in Habasha, they didn't feel comfortable with that. And this, just as a side benefit, is one of the traits of someone that has this type of hatred and this type of disease in their heart. They don't want to see anyone else succeeding. So if they hear about someone else doing well, they will try their best to put a stop to that. And the Quraysh, they have this sickness in their heart. So what they actually did, instead of letting the Muslims go, instead of letting the Muslims be in Habasha, they actually sent a group of people after them. And once they arrived there, they started speaking to that king Najashi, and Najashi, they told him lies. They told him lies in order to try to put him against the Muslimin. And because Najashi was a just ruler, he didn't only listen to one part of the story, but he called those Muslims, and he had a council, and he started asking them questions. And this, again, there's a side benefit to that, is that if you, regardless if you are a king or you're just a simple person, even then you should try to be as just as possible. Meaning that if someone comes to you, even your own children, if one child comes to you running and says, daddy, daddy, or mommy, mommy, this person hit me, then justice demands that you go and ask the other child or the other person what actually happened, to get to the bottom of it. But what usually happens is, and this is a problem not only within the Muslim community, but mankind as a whole, is that if someone comes to us and tells us their version of the story, then we usually lean towards that first version of the story that we are told. This is not the correct way to approach things. And what makes it even more dangerous is sometimes if someone that you know tells you a version of events, you're going to prefer the version of events from the person that you know, and you're going to disregard or at least not favor the version of someone that you don't know. This is human nature. But Islam came to put a stop to that. Even the Prophet ﷺ, whenever there was a quarrel or some kind of problem between people, the Prophet ﷺ would try his best to make every person, to hear every person. So everyone had a voice when they came in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and we see that even afterwards amongst the Khulafa, those who took after the Prophet ﷺ. In some narrations we are told that sometimes there would be a dispute between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. And these great leaders would not look at it, they would not favor the Muslim just because he was Muslim. They would look at where does the truth lie. Does the truth lie with the Muslim or does it lie with the non-Muslim? And this should be the mentality that we all should adopt. So coming back to the story, this Najashi, this great man, he called the Muslims and he started asking them. One of the first questions he asked them was, he said, are you Jews? Are you Jewish? Do you believe in the Jewish faith? And they replied, no, we're not, these early Muslims. And then he said, what do you believe in? Do you believe in the religion of your people? They said, no, we don't. And then he said, so what do you believe in then? And then they said, we believe in Islam. There's a new word, he's never heard of it. So he asks them, what is Islam? And then the companions, they start explaining to Najashi what the religion means. That the Prophet ﷺ came with a message of, for mankind to worship Allah Azza wa Jal alone and to leave off any other type of worship, worshipping Allah without any partners. Tawheed, La ilaha illallah. So now the Najashi, he's very interested in what they're saying. He's very interested and he wants to know more. But the mushrikeen of Quraysh, they try to find what today they call it triggers. They try to find ways to upset Najashi. So they're trying to think, what can make Najashi, dislike these Muslims? So they find one part that they think will be in their advantage. So they say that Muslims don't believe in Isa alayhi salam, or at the very least not in the same way that Najashi believes in, because they know that Najashi is Christian. Now what happens is Najashi asks them specifically about what Muslims say about Isa alayhi salam and what the belief is. And then one of the companions, Ja'far radiallahu anhu, that is when he takes that opportunity and he recites to Najashi Surah Maryam. And this is one of the early chapters in Islam, and in it Allah Azza wa Jal has made clear the stance in Islam, the true stance of what happened, the way that Isa alayhi salam was born, the fact that he became a prophet at a very, very young age, all those things that are mentioned in Surah Maryam. And the narrations tell us that the more Ja'far radiallahu anhu would recite of the surah, the more Najashi and the people close to him started crying, because they understood that this was the true religion. And Najashi said, by Allah, I do not defer, I do not disagree with what has been recited to me. I believe in what has been mentioned in the books. And the narrations tell us that Najashi ended up accepting Islam. He accepted Islam and he led the Muslims live in peace in his land from that moment on, and he actually caused the mushrikeen to go back to Mecca. The mushrikeen, they realized that now they didn't have any other way of trying to remove those early Muslims from Habasha and send them back to Mecca, and that was the plan, that was what they wanted to do. So they gave up hope and they went back to Mecca. Now, Another important thing is that the narrations tell us that Najashi became Muslim, and it also says that later on, fast forward in time, Najashi passes away, he dies. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard about the death of Najashi, he actually informed the companions. He said, today, the Prophet ﷺ said, today a righteous, a good person has passed away. So stand up and pray on him. So the Prophet ﷺ, along with the companions, they prayed Salatul Janazah without the body being there in front of them. And this is one of the evidences that scholars in Islam use to show that it is permissible for a person to pray Janazah on another person, even though the body itself might be somewhere else. So let's say a close family member or a friend of yours passes away in Somalia or Pakistan or anywhere else in the world, and you're not there at the moment, you're here in Canada. It is permissible for you to pray janazah on that person, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. Another important point to mention here is that Najashi, or rather, if you remember from yesterday's class, we mentioned that in order to be a companion, you have to fulfill certain points, you have to fulfill certain things that the scholars have mentioned. Can anyone remember some of these things that were mentioned yesterday? What were the things that a person has to fulfill in order to be referred to as a companion of the Prophet ﷺ? Jazakallah khair. That's the first point. Living at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The second point was? Sorry? Exactly. You have to believe in the message of the Prophet ﷺ, and then thirdly and lastly, you have to? Exactly. Allah Azza wa Jalla has to have taken your soul in the state of Iman. You have to have died as a Muslim. If these three conditions are met, then the person is considered to be a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, if we look at Najashi, Najashi is one of the few cases where you might think he should be a companion, because he was alive at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And he met the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He believed in the Prophet ﷺ, and he died as a Muslim. Even the Prophet ﷺ himself acknowledged that fact. However, there is a small technicality, and that is Najashi actually never saw the Prophet ﷺ. He never had physical interactions with the Prophet ﷺ. Because of that, he did not really fulfill that first condition. So because of that, the scholars in Islam, they say Najashi, even though he was a very pious man and he was a great man, he was not a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He was something else. And that something else is known as a tabi'i. A tabi'i meaning those that came after the companions. So the three conditions that I mentioned before, seeing the Prophet ﷺ or being alive at his time, believing in him, and passing away as a Muslim, if you move one level down from the Prophet ﷺ, those three conditions are still supposed to be met. Meaning, instead of seeing the Prophet ﷺ, in order for you to be a tabi'i, who must you have seen? The Sahaba, right? So if you meet any of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ and you believed in the message that they came with, meaning the message of Islam, the religion that the Prophet ﷺ taught us, and you died as a Muslim, then you will not be a companion, but you will be those that saw and interacted with the companions, tabi'in, such as some of the most well-known tabi'in are Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Abu Hanifa, even though people, they don't know great details about him, some people don't even know that great Imam was actually a tabi'in. He met some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and so on. So after that first generation of companions, you have the tabi'in, those who met the companions, and then there's a third level, atba' tabi'in, those who came after the tabi'in, those who met the tabi'in. And these three generations are important because there's narrations from the Prophet ﷺ that tells us that the true guidance will always be kept within these three generations, meaning the generation of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, those that came after them, the Tabi'een, and then thirdly, the Atba' Tabi'een, those who came after the Tabi'een. So as Muslims, when we look at the golden era of Islam, when we look at the ones that we should try to follow to the best of our ability, first and foremost, without a doubt, it is the Prophet ﷺ. And then the next stage is the companions, Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And then following that are those that came after and those that came after. Okay? Why is this important? Because these three generations are known as the pious predecessors. In Arabic it's called Salaf al-Salih. Salaf in the Quran, it is used to mean whatever came before. Illa ma qad salaf, what has come before. So when a person talks about what is true Islam, how are you supposed to understand Islam? Then we say you're supposed to understand Islam the way that the Prophet ﷺ understood it, the way that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu understood it, the way that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala understood it, the way that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala understood it. If you understand Islam in the same way that all these pious people before us understood Islam, then you are upon the correct Islam. But if you differ in terms of aqidah, and we're not talking about fiqh, but if you differ in aqidah, if for example Imam Abu Hanifa says that Allah Azza wa Jal is above his throne, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa, meaning that Allah Azza wa Jal is above his throne in a way that befits his majesty. If you don't believe in the same way that Imam Abu Hanifa believes in, then there's a problem with your Islam. So this is why it's so important that we always check our faith with the faith of those early generations, those pious people. And we'll actually conclude today's class